All right, so we are back in the realm of fiction with our next novel, Ordinary People, which is a book written by Judith Guest. Let's go and get started. Like I said, Ordinary People was published in 1976, written by Judith Guest. It was made into a movie in 1980. The movie actually experienced quite a bit of critical success. It was nominated for four Academy Awards, and excuse me, it won four Academy Awards, including one for Best Picture. So in a lot of ways, the movie might be more well known than the book, but we're going to spend our time focusing on the novel. The novel is told in the third person point of view, kind of. And what I mean by that is that each chapter is going to alternate perspective. So one chapter, we're going to get the story being told from Conrad's point of view, and the next chapter, we're going to get we're going to get hear the story from Calvin's point of view. So we kind of get two stories all wrapped up into one. Our protagonists in this novel are Conrad, who is the son, and Calvin, who is the father. So on that note, let's take a closer look at some of the characters in this book. We have kind of four major characters, but there are some other ones that'll kind of slip in here. But let's go over the four big ones. Beth Jarrett is the mother of the Jarrett family, and it's interesting that many people have some very strong reactions to Beth. She's a very interesting character, so I'm anxious to know what you guys think about Beth Jarrett. We also have Calvin Jarrett. So half the book is told from Calvin Jarrett's point of view, and he is the father of the Jarrett family. Conrad Jarrett is their 17-year-old son, and then Dr. Berger is Conrad's psychiatrist. And let's kind of dive into the book a little bit more and maybe figure out and explain why Conrad would need to see a psychiatrist in the first place. So before the novel begins, there's an accident. So Ordinary People focuses on a family of four. Like I mentioned earlier, Beth, Calvin, Conrad, and there was another son named Buck or Jordan. And before the novel begins, we find out that this is a upper middle class family living in the suburbs of Chicago, and Conrad and his brother Buck or Jordan are on their sailboat in Lake Michigan, and there's a really bad storm, and their boat capsizes and tips over, and both brothers hold on as long as they possibly can. But Buck loses strength and is unable to hold on to the boat, and he tragically drowns. After that accident, it throws the family into a tailspin of grief and chaos. Conrad doesn't really know how to handle the death of his brother. He feels partly responsible, and so he tries to commit suicide. Is unsuccessful in that attempt, but is put into uh, a um, a mental hospital to help him kind of make a full recovery. And when the novel begins, it is actually one of Conrad's first days back at school since he has been released from the mental hospital. So everything I just told you happens before the novel actually takes place, before the novel actually begins. But those events will be hinted towards and will be talked about quite a bit. So I just want to make sure you have that information. One essential part of this novel is to understand that all characters are going to respond to grief in different ways. And so I think it's important for us to contemplate, is there a right way to handle this? Is there a right way to handle such a tragic event in a family? One thing that can be kind of tricky about Ordinary People is the shifting tenses. So the novel does slip kind of and shift from the past to the present tense very suddenly, and therefore, as a reader, you must read very quickly, or excuse me, read very carefully to determine if the event is happening in the past or present. And I think as the novel progresses, you'll get used to it. But at the beginning, it can be kind of tricky. So you got to kind of pay attention to the shifting tenses in the novel. So these are some things that we're going to focus on while we read. We're going to focus on relationships. We're going to focus on relationships between husband and wife, between father and son, between mother and son. We're going to look at relationships of romantic relationships, friendly relationships. All different types of relationships are going to be explored, and how tragedy can affect those relationships. We're going to talk a little psychology. So if you like talking about that, and kind of like what we did with Catching the Rye, we'll go back to a few more elements of psychology that we hadn't gotten into yet. We're going to talk about tragedy and how tragedy influences people and how tragedy influences a family unit. And then kind of tying into some of the romanticism things that we've been talking about, we're really going to focus on individuality and how individuals find themselves in the midst of great tragedy and grief, and how individuals resolve to be themselves despite what other people might be asking of them. We're going to look at the idea of parenthood, what it means to be a parent, what it means to be a child, and then lastly, we're going to look at perspective and how different people can bring different perspectives to the same event and create a meaning that can be both troubling to understand, but also a very enlightening experience. All right, so that is it with Ordinary People as far as an introduction. I will be back to kind of break down more of the chapters, but I just wanted to give you a little overview and go ahead and start reading, and I hope you enjoy it.